Hello there! My name is Mara from the BookTube channel Books Like Whoa, and today we are going to talk about where to start with category romances. So, category romances, I think, are how a lot of people get into romance in the first place. I know my first romance was a category romance. This was at a beach house I was staying at, and this is from like 1987. This was the first romance I ever read, and it was a category romance. So what are category romances? Basically, they are in certain lines from different publishers. I think all the ones I'm going to talk about today are from Harlequin, because that's frankly just tends to be the ones that I'm familiar with. But basically, you kind of know what the vibe of any one book in that line is going to be. So is it going to be a super sort of like spicy romance? Is it going to be more sweet? Is it a heightened emotion contemporary? Is it a mystery, like a romantic suspense? Like, you kind of know what the vibe of any one book in that line is going to be like. And it lets you sort of try new authors that you may not have read before, but if they are in that line, you have a certain amount of confidence that you're probably going to like that book pretty well, because if you like that line, you know, everyone has specifics and nuances of taste, but in general, you probably are going to like that book. So in terms of figuring out where to start with categories, I should mention I am not going to talk about any lines that are not sort of just like general contemporary, just because that tends to be what I read, so I feel like that's what I'm equipped to give recommendations for. But honestly, if you are interested in trying a category line, one of the best things you can do is just to read whatever the most recent releases are, or pick out some ones that have come out recently. A couple of examples from Harlequin lines that have come out recently. One is A Delicious Dilemma by Sarah Taino, and this one is basically a, hey, I thought we were just gonna have a one-night stand kind of story, but surprise, now we're gonna have to work together, which is actually also the trope for Secrets of a One-Night Stand by Naima Simone, which also is coming out soon. But anyway, A Delicious Dilemma, the heroine is a chef in her family's Puerto Rican family restaurant, and the dude she has a one-night stand with is the head developer who's trying to like buy their land out from underneath them, and conflict ensues. Similarly, like I mentioned, Secrets of a One-Night Stand by Naima Simone is one night hookup, go to your new job, the person you hooked up with is your boss, and also, whoops, I'm pregnant. So both of those are examples of kind of like really distilled tropes. That's what I think category romances do really well, is that they take a well-loved trope in romance and they just sort of like condense it down and give it to you like sort of a shot of adrenaline in your arm of like, here is this trope. So both of those are playing with one-night stand tropes. Both of them are playing with workplace romance tropes. A Delicious Dilemma is also playing with this sort of like family business aspect and sort of like rivals to lovers, whereas Secrets of a One-Night Stand is playing with a surprise pregnancy trope. So both of those are ones that are coming out and perfectly good places to dip your toes in to see if you like that kind of book. Also, Best Kept Royal Secret by Lynn Graham, that is a royalty trope, which is something that often comes up in category romances. It's one I really like, and actually we will be talking more about Lynn Graham here in a minute with some of my other recommendations. But she has been writing categories for a long time. She is sort of like a veteran of this type of book, and I really like her books a lot. So if you just want to try her newest one, rather than going into the backlist like some of the other books I'm going to recommend from her, that is a perfectly good place to start with categories. So that's my first recommendation, is just pick a line that you're interested in, see what some of the new releases are, and just start trying them and seeing if any of them click with you. So then I wanted to give you guys some specific title recommendations to give you different types of category romances that you might be interested in. So I tend to think about the category contemporary romances as falling into two buckets, basically being sort of like high angst or lower angst. I think people sort of associate category with high angst, but I wanted to give some examples of where I don't think that that's always the case. I also think that traditionally people associate categories with sort of very dominant heroes. And again, I wanted to give some sort of contrasting examples of sometimes that being true, but sometimes not. So I think that there really is something kind of for everyone in that respect. So let's just start with our higher angst ones. So I love Sarah Mayberry's enjoys category romances. I think that she's somebody who writes emotion really powerfully. I feel like her books always make me cry. And the one in particular I picked out is Anything for You, which is a friends to lovers trope. And it's basically these two friends who have a business together. The girl has been aware that she's in love with her dude friend forever. He has not realized that he has feelings for her because, you know, men basically. And so this basically it's their whole dynamic coming to a head and her deciding like, I have to have more or this has to end. And so it's very emotional but great. It's also very steamy. So if you're looking for one that has, you know, some sexy times, that definitely will do you. But Sarah Mayberry, I think, has a really lovely writing quality, and her books, like I said, are just very emotional in a way that is very satisfying if that's what you're in the mood for. Lynn Graham, like I mentioned, she's been doing categories for a long time, and I do feel like hers tend to be more on the kind of like high emotion side. Her heroes also tend to be pretty on the more like dominant side. So two examples. One was the first category I read when I was first like really getting into romance, and that was Ruthless Magnate's Virgin Mistress, which is also, I think, in either a duology or a trilogy of different like really rich dudes getting with people. And basically this is between a Russian magnate, a woman that he sees at a charity fashion show, and it's basically kind of insta-love, or it's definitely insta-lust for him. And she is a virgin widow. Don't you love, I love that trope so much. She is a virgin widow, and basically she never wants to be with anybody else. Like, she was in love with her husband, but he was killed on their wedding day, and basically our hero is trying to persuade her like, no, you should have an affair with me. So that one is very sort of like high emotion, kind of over the top tropes in a way that I love and I think is really fun. Like Lynn Graham's books, I always feel like are just sort of like going with it, and I always have a great time in them. A Deal at the Altar is a marriage of convenience story because the hero has inherited as like the guardian his brother's kids, and he wants a mother for them. And he may or may not catch some feelings in that process. He is also very high-handed. It is very emotional, but it is fantastic. So I would recommend both of those. And then a more recent find for me, or an author I've been enjoying more recently, is Reese Ryan, who is really wonderful. I think she's been getting a lot of kudos in the last couple of years, rightfully so. The only book of hers I've tried is His Until Midnight, which was in the sort of like Texas Oil Baron series that she was writing in. It's got a bunch of different authors who have written in it, and I just thought that this was a super effective sort of like higher emotion version of a category. So if you're looking for sort of like a hot new author in category romance, I think Reese Ryan is definitely that, and that was the first one I read and I really enjoyed it. So then moving into slightly lower emotion, these still have like some emotional components to them and some angsty components, but less so. I thought I would throw it back to some really early Nora Roberts categories. These came out in 87 and 94, but they were bound up into this edition called Sunshine Season. So it is Temptation, which is basically about a socialite who's lost it all, and she's invested her last pennies into this elite summer camp for girls, and she falls in love with the dude who owns an apple orchard farm next door. So I thought that was a fun setting, and we have a very plucky heroine who is finding herself. Hero is pretty high-handed, but it's not super emotional, I don't think. And then The Best Mistake has a single mom, and she's having a romance with her new tenant in the apartment upstairs in her house. And again, he is a little bit high-handed with her, but overall I feel like the angst is relatively low, especially for earlier categories. So if you're looking for one of the sort of classic category authors, is definitely Nora Roberts. And I think if you're looking for someone who is writing slightly less high-handed heroes for the era she was writing in, I think this is really fun. Like, these are always just, I often read these in an evening when I've had like a long day at work. I'll just read like a Nora Roberts category, and it's just like, I love her writing. I love the types of heroine she writes. She always writes careers really compellingly. So yeah, I think this is a great pick if you're looking for kind of a classic category author. I really love Helen Bianchen. Her books, I can't quite explain them. They are not plot heavy at all. They're very sort of like hanging with the characters vibe, and they're always like rich Australian adjacent. Alessandra's Prize was the first one I read from her, and it's like Australian, but then like they're Italians living in Australia. That tends to be usually the situation. So in this case, it's Australians siblings who are Italian going back to visit their relatives in Italy, and particularly our heroine has had a very nasty breakup. I think it was she was engaged and got jilted, and Alessandro is a family friend who's been like waiting to pounce once she is free. So like he sees his chance and he's like, okay, cool, we're gonna get married. He is a very high-handed hero. He's very dominant, but it really worked for me. And there's just a lot of like, hey, we're going shopping in Milan. Sometimes that's just like some lovely escapism, which I think you often get in categories. A lot of times they're traveling or sort of going to these sort of escapist destinations. And I feel like this book delivers on that vibe for me. And then the last person I wanted to mention was Kate Hardy, and that is because Kate Hardy is probably my favorite category author. She has two different flavors she does. I guess this is the one variant from my sort of like just general contemporary kick. I do love all of the different medical category lines where there are romances happening between nurses, doctors, EMT workers, just anybody who's in the medical field. I feel like a lot of them are set in the UK, at least the ones that I like, and I love this version of a category romance because they tend to be less angsty, like they're on the lower angst side of things because there's a lot of focus usually on the profession of the characters, and that is definitely true with this one that I'm going to recommend, which is The Children Doctor's Special Proposal. I love the way Kate Hardy writes these medical category romances. I think she was a nurse, so I don't know, you can tell that she really likes talking about all of these different aspects of being in the medical profession. They tend to be more like external conflict driven because often there's like a case that's difficult that they're working on or something like that that is not just the relationship between them. There's something kind of external going on. So I love all of her medical categories. Those are my favorites. But then I also like her just sort of general contemporaries. And one I would recommend is In Bed with Her Italian Boss, which is between a woman who is going to work at a sort of Italian coffee parlor and the guy who owns it. Again, Kate Hardy has a lot of Italians in hers, which tends to work for me. So anyway, those are some recommendations on where you can start with categories. I hope that that was helpful. I know that there's a lot out there, but like I said, I feel like this is a kind of romance where you just kind of got to get in there and figure out what works for you, and you'll quickly figure out like, oh, these are the authors I really like, this is the line I really like, and you'll just have a ton of books to read because there's new ones that come out every month. So definitely let me know if you are a lover of category romance where you suggest people start to get into the genre. Let us know in the comments below. And yeah, I think that that will do it for me. If you liked what you saw, you should definitely subscribe to Harlequin Books and follow them on all of their social platforms, Facebook, Instagram, etc. You can follow me at Books Like Whoa on YouTube and Goodreads and Instagram, TikTok, all the things. You can follow me there. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!